This is also, they have a nice spotlight here, saying it feels like a buffet lamp instead of a spotlight. It's quite toasty up here, which is kind of nice compared to being outside. This is probably the coldest ice conference, and finally, an appropriate name. We will scratch single digits today in the temperature, which is exciting. All right. Well, let us get this show on the road. My name is Mark Fijor, and I'm the technology coordinator at the Cove School, formerly with District 25 in Arlington Heights. The Cove School, if you don't know it or haven't heard of it, which I assume might be the case, is it's in Northbrook. It's a therapeutic day school. It's a K-12 therapeutic day school for students with complex learning disabilities. And so in jumping from 25, which is a K-8 district in Arlington Heights, to a K-12 school for students with complex learning disabilities, the challenge for me was really to see this process and how well it worked and how well some of these tools worked. I was really concerned that some of that bag of tricks from working with junior high and middle and fifth graders would not work in this situation. And after a year, I can say it definitely works. And that's why I think this presentation is valuable. And whether you're, K-12, if you're a high school, junior high, middle school, elementary school, there are things in this presentation that I think you'll be able to take away. And so that's why I'm really excited to share with you. So the title of today is Google Apps and Common Core Short Research. So if you're playing conference buzzword bingo, you've knocked 2 words out of the bag right there. There'll probably be some other ones in there, but that's how we like to start out the conference. Just make it easy. Google Apps and Common Core. So I want to start out by talking about a problem that I saw with our research process. A lot of times we do these long research projects, and the kids would create presentations and they'd present, and you'd sit in the back of the room and you watch these presentations. So this was an example of school for free. The next sentence was they go to school for free until the age of 14, and then there's a paid system. So I started looking at the kid's information. I said, he missed the big picture. He missed the important fact. Not all kids go to school for free. So in that case, it was an instance of maybe that kind of close reading, or they didn't get enough information. So we wanted to look at a process that gave us a light into the kids' thinking and gave us a window into that research. So we looked at this idea of research by design. Looking at the process of research by design, kind of that backwards approach to planning research. And we said, let's start by identifying, well, what do we want? What skills do we want kids to be able knowledge, and that idea of SAMR, taking something that's transitional and moving it towards transformational. What does this tool allow us to do that changes the process? And I hope throughout this presentation, you'll see examples of how Google Apps has completely transformed some pieces of the research process. Not all, but some, or at least enough to make it valuable. So that's why we chose to look at using Google Docs to help this process. Going back to those standards, we looked at that Common Core piece. What skills do we need kids to have, and how do we assess them? And so today when we talk about these Common Core standards, we're really going to focus on the anchor standards. We're really going to focus on anchor standards. And the reason being is it's applicable really to all age levels. It's just the complexity of the content. The skill kind of stays the same. It's the complexity of the content that changes. In our setting at Cove, when we look at our students with special needs or with learning disabilities, it's really being able to use those anchor standards as a guide and modify them to meet each kid at their individual level. So we really start with that Common Core piece. When we look at those skills that go into research, and we look at that process, we start by wanting to build the skills necessary to do the research. Okay? We don't want to just send kids off to Google and say, go look up, rattlesnakes. You'll never know what they find. It could be just a hot mess, right? Or you can get some really interesting search results. So we want to build that process. We want to scaffold to really good research. Because we tell our kids, this process, although it may seem arduous at times, is really designed to make you successful. It's really to make you a great researcher and to make it easy for you. So we start by looking at designing activities that build up to the skills necessary to research. So just a quick example of something you can do with Google Docs is we looked at that close reading piece. So if we're going to send kids out onto the internet, we want to be able to teach them how to read articles and how to find the information that's going to be necessary. So we start by modeling that process. So in this particular example, in the close reading example, we'll go ahead and open it up here. And again, all these are clickable. This is an article that we gave kids, similar to what they might find, if they were looking up something about the water cycle. And so what we do is we put the articles in here, and we can differentiate, and we'll talk about a tool that allows us to do that. So we can differentiate by level in terms of the reading level or the text level. And at the end, we can ask them a series of questions that kind of practice the skill of close reading. We can ask them to look at main idea. We practice using the highlighter tool. So up in the text tool, we have the stage. You might be doing this on paper already. Okay, you might be doing this on paper. You might be getting out highlighters and annotating text. But we use the Google Docs to help us push this information out, model it, and then we also have that assessment piece. All of our teachers are shared back to the doc. They can see where each kid is real time. We talk about feedback and the ability to assess and to kind of guide kids. Google allows us to do that. So this is just an example of the close reading that we use to kind of begin that scaffolding process. The next skill we'll look at is, let's say you're doing a research project for a specific subject, and you need that kind of domain-specific vocabulary. You need to build that background vocabulary before you get in. This example is just a multimodal glossary, but it's really, really cool. So essentially what it is just a table where you're giving kids terms, and you ask them not only to find examples and definitions, but we want them to be able to use it in a sentence. It's totally customizable. You can do whatever you want here. But what's nice about this is we also ask them to add pictures. So I want to show you the research tool that we use throughout this process that is just awesome and makes it super simple. So in a Google Doc, for example, you have what's called the research tool. So I'm just going to open this up here in Safari for you, and we'll take a look at the research tool. How many have seen or used the research tool in their classes? Excellent. So this will be new information for a lot of people. It's pretty awesome. So up in the top of the Google Doc under Tools, is the option for research. And this research panel is pretty incredible. It gives you filtered results. It's not the whole web. It gives you filtered results for what you're looking for that are mostly academic. Mostly academic. It instantly filters out content that would be .com, but it also acts as a search engine for images. It acts as a dictionary. It looks up quotes. It has all this information in one place. So when we start doing these lessons, and we use this multimodal glossary, we use a research tool to really help the kids navigate. So let's say I wanted to look up something for that multimodal representation. I love this picture here on the bottom, and I'm not sure you can see in the back, but it's such a great picture. The term is contagious disease. So we tell kids, find a picture. Don't type in necessarily contagious disease or conquistador. We want you to find something that's going to help you remember the definition. What does this mean to you? And find a picture that really represents that term. And so they found people with gas masks. They found people with masks on their face for contagious disease because it helps them remember that. So you can actually type in the research bar here, you say people with masks. And of course it has no results now, but it does work sometimes. And you go to images, or you say gas masks. There we go. And all you do is click, drag and drop, and it goes right in there. So they're not going between multiple windows. They're not going to different websites. All of the research and all the images are right there in one place. It's a really, really neat tool. And we'll talk about it just a little bit more when we get into the actual research. And again, we're building those skills. We're building the skills that kids are going to need to have. So in this case, we're looking at vocabulary, but really we're building that fluency and using that tool to be able to conduct the research. So now they're getting used to the tool, they're learning the tool, and they're able to use it for a whole variety of lessons. It's an amazing tool, and kids love using it. Kids love using it because they're not having to navigate between windows. It's right there for them. This was a huge win for our students at Cove, especially in our elementary and junior high, to the point where they're actually, if a teacher goes to Google search, they're actually redirecting them back and saying, why aren't you using the research tool? They really, really like this tool. Just a quick side note about this vocabulary lesson that's pretty interesting. We had a high school class that was doing vocab, and they were giving terms on a worksheet and asking kids to do it as part of their homework. And the teacher was struggling with homework completion. So we talked and said, well, what is it that you want to do? And how can we make this a little bit more engaging for kids, give them a little bit more ownership of it? And we looked at this multimodal glossary. So for that unit, they got the terms, and we actually were able to differentiate. So for example, the group that might be struggling got a little bit more information. So they didn't just get the term, they maybe got the term and the definition. They had to provide the example and find the picture. The students who were a little bit higher just had a blank sheet. And within the first unit, the homework completion rate went from 0 to 75% of the kids in high school. So this tool really works, and the kids love using it. They love the organization piece. So again, building those background skills and scaffolding to that research is really helpful, and gives those kids a chance to succeed. So that's the multimodal glossary, and that's a little bit of the research tool, and we'll talk more about it as we get into the research. Again, we talk about the use of technology. It's important to note that, again, this is embedded in everything we're doing. Technology is embedded in everything we're doing here. We're able to use it to publish our writing, to interact with each other. So in that multimodal glossary, maybe they were doing it in groups, okay? Maybe they were working collaborative. The feedback piece, it's important to note, going back to those Common Core standards, that we're using technology, and we can build that into our rubrics and how they're using it, but it's important to know. The big crux of what I want to talk about today is, once we've started to build some of those skills and build the use of the tool, or get kids familiar with using the tool for that research, is this idea of our research form, and going back to that initial problem. So now we've built some of those skills. We've looked at close reading, we've looked at vocabulary, we can look at other things along the way to kind of practice and model. But the student research form is really the crux of what I want to talk about, and really shows the versatility of the Google Apps. So I'm going to open up the research form here. It's not the most exciting form in the world. It's essentially just a table. But we wanted to look at that process. And we wanted to design something that helped us address some of those questions. And we want to use the tools that we're already using. So if I open up my research tool, again, we tell kids this is what their workspace should look like. So what the research form does is it walks them through that research process. What's your topic? What's your essential research question? And what are you looking for? And then again, this can be collaborative or it could be independent. We've done it with both. And then the box underneath here looks at source, evidence and fact, and then a column, what does this mean to you? Or what this means. And this was huge for us, because if we looked at that research process before, we had kids doing note facts. We had kids doing note cards. And one of the bigger pieces was they would have to go in and basically, as you wrote a note fact, you'd have to transcribe it or paraphrase it. You couldn't take it directly out of the book. So we wanted to create a process that eliminated some of that and gave kids kind of the organizational structure to be successful. So let's say we look at research, and let's say we're looking at, I keep using this example, let's say we're looking at rattlesnakes. Let's say we just want some general information about rattlesnakes. And it is in there. Let's just look at snakes. So when you do the research, when they actually look up these websites, and again, this is the problem with trying this technology live, it does work. When you get to a website, what it does is it gives you information, different types of information, different types of sites that you wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. You wouldn't get just by going to .com. So right now it may work on yours, it's not just working on mine. But what it does is it filters out those results, and then kids can go to that website. So here's a cool part. What we tell kids to do is, we'll just use Wikipedia for now, even though we wouldn't really do that at school. What we tell kids is, as you're doing the reading, as you find information, don't look for snippets. Look for big things. Don't look for one sentence. If you think a paragraph relates back to your essential question, don't rewrite it, copy and paste it. So the kids go in, they copy it, and then they paste it right into their evidence. There's an option to insert the link directly into the source. So you can copy and paste the URL into the source. What that does is it takes you back, and there's no guesswork as to where that information came from. So let's say we were using this example. We'd have that URL right there, and we as a teacher could always go back and see where it came from. Okay? As they go through, now we ask them, what does this mean to you? So going back to that idea of the note cards, going back and looking at that process, to ask kids to paraphrase something that they're learning for the first time potentially is crazy. We couldn't do it as adults. It's really hard to learn something new and to take something that's out there and paraphrase it and make it in your own words the first time that you see it. So we say, don't do that. Copy, paste. Then as you go, take notes into what this means. What does this mean? Why is this information important? And it may change, and it's fluid. So when we did stuff with note facts, they would write it on the fact that goes in the folder, and they don't see it again until they categorize. This is living. That information may change, and that information become more important, less important as you go in your research. So as you collect your research, the next step is to say, whatever you're looking at, now let's start identifying some main ideas. So if we're looking at a persuasive piece, and we're doing some sort of claims, we want to start generating our claims. We want to start being able to generate our claims. So as they read through all the research, maybe they come up with 3 things that they say, the research kind of says this. And we had somebody doing medical marijuana, and one of his claims was it's just not dangerous for you. And we said, okay, that's great. Now go back in your research and prove it. So what we asked them to do is to start color coding their research. to go back and actually color code their research based on their main idea. So I'm actually, I'll pull up a live example of that student. Hopefully he's not on it. And essentially, not harmful, he says. So that's his main idea. Then we say go back and reread. Anywhere in your research that it talks about not being harmful, color code it. He says it'll make a lot of money for the government. Anytime you see where it talks about making a lot of money and why it should be illegal, highlight it in purple. And then anytime you see where it talks about the medicinal uses, highlight it in blue. And again, this, from an assessment standpoint, gives us a complete window into where the kids are. We're not pulling one fact out and hoping that it's right or they rewrote it correctly. The information is right there in front of us. If I want to go back to the article and see, did they really get it? Did they miss important information? You know, I can click on that article and I see exactly what I saw. It's a pretty amazing leap from the idea of just having a book and writing a fact from it. That you are able to go back to that source at any time and see where the kids are. So as they go through this process now, they start narrowing down that information. So by color coding it, they start narrowing it down. The next step of this is to really start putting that final product together. Are they just researching? Are they going to create a presentation? Are they writing a paper? The next step in the process is to put all those pieces together. So right now, if we talk about that claim and evidence, they have three claims, and now we ask them, let's say, arbitrarily look for 3 supporting details for that claim. So now they have to go and kind of narrow down. And you can see what's kind of cool about this is some of this information they don't use, and that's okay. One thing we saw about the note facts was there seemed to be that they felt like they had to use all of it. They had to categorize it and use all of it. We're here, we're saying find the best. What's going to be the best thing to support your claim? What's going to be the best evidence? And so it's a neat process to kind of walk through. Again, the teacher, as this form is going on, the teacher is actually able to go on to it at any point in time and see where the kids are at, what they're researching, are they getting it? Throughout this process, we build in conference time, where the teacher and the student are looking at the same research form and seeing where they're at. You know, do you have enough information for that claim? You know, maybe you have to go back and get more. And the neat part about this highlighting process, again, when we looked at that close reading, being able to highlight those supporting details, the neat thing about this process is, as they go through and they look at their claims, it's really amazing when they realize, you know what, I don't have enough information for this. That's a neat thing to see from a kid in terms of that thinking process. And then they can either go back and get more information, or they may change their claim. We actually had a situation where kids were looking at rattlesnakes, and their claim was that rattlesnakes are dangerous to humans. And as they went through the research, they actually found that rattlesnakes were not dangerous to humans. More people die from dog bites than they do rattlesnakes in a year. And they had information that really contradicted their claim. So they switched their claim midway through. You know, so instead of only looking at dangerous rattlesnakes, by having all of that information there in front of them, they were able to go back and they switched their claim. They switched their entire paper around or their entire presentation around. That's the power in this tool. And what's nice about this is, in this particular example, we've had people modify it and change it. So instead of looking up essential questions, they may have like 4 guiding questions that they have to answer. I've seen people add a column here that actually, as you look at a source, going back and saying, what question does this answer? The idea that Google Docs, the benefit of Google Docs is really this unparalleled flexibility. This isn't a worksheet. This isn't copy once and there it is. It's not a journal. If we need something on the fly, we add it. If kids are struggling with the organization, we add a column, we add a row. You know, they need more, great. So again, it's a really powerful form, and all it is tables. But go back to that design process that we talked about in the beginning. What do we want kids to be able to do? You know, if we're talking about claim and evidence, we need to design a process, you know, that's really going to help them get to that level and be able to use the tools available to make really great claims and to see, are they getting it? And be able to assess, do they understand? Okay? That's the Google Research tool. That's a Google Research form and the Google Research tool. And again, this tool is pretty amazing. Tools and research. The neat part is, too, when it works, is you can select something and just click research. So right now, it's looking for oceans. I don't want to disconnect my Wi-Fi, but when it works, it'll actually select oceans and look for it. It's a pretty neat tool. And again, it's so versatile because you don't have to be doing research to use it. It's a nice alternative to the Google search. What's also cool is if I'm looking up images, for example, under the drop-down on the right-hand side, I can actually filter by license. So if I'm really looking at, if it's important to me that we are following good copyright guidelines and we're being ethical users of this, we can say, use only things that are free to use. And so it'll pull images only free to use. Underneath that image filtering is a citation piece. It has built-in citation for every article, every image that you use. All of that information is built in. And so depending on what you're doing, you can search MLA, APA, Chicago style. When you go to insert a written link or insert a citation, it does it correctly for the most part. It's a pretty neat tool. It's a pretty neat tool. I've had people say that they would have used it for their dissertation had they had it available to them. Just that organization piece. Again, in writing papers for grad school, I use this form or variations of it. It's a really nice tool. And again, you see all the other options that are available. If you're looking for quick information, it'll pull up tables. Kids have access to quick information, whether it be through Wikipedia or Wolfram Alpha. You see that they have quotes, scholarly articles, okay? And the dictionary piece is pretty darn cool too. So when we go back and we do that multimodal glossary, if we wanted to click on dictionary, again, it's not finding any results, but if we did dictionary, it would pull up a definition of whatever we're looking for. Pretty neat stuff. And that's a Google Research tool. Kind of moving back to other forms available, we also have different graphic organizers that kids can use after the research process. So in this case, we're looking at, again, main idea and supporting details. And we're looking at this graphic organizer. So within the Google Docs is Google Draw, where you can actually create collaborative graphic organizers. So this is our main idea tree. It's got the trunk, our topic, and our main ideas. And then all of our supporting details, we colored them green and made them leaves. So we can replicate these worksheets, these graphic organizers that we get out of the books, and we add that Google piece to it. So not only are we using this, not only do we have this digitally, but we can also share it out. So as a group, we could all work on this together. It's kind of crazy when you have more than 3 people working in a Google Draw because you got boxes going all over the place. But to have that collaborative or cooperative piece can be very important to what you're doing. It all goes back to what's your objective, what do you want to do. But this is one way for students to be able to organize their thoughts. So they can copy and paste their new information in here, or they can start rewriting it. But it's a nice way for them to organize their thoughts. The other piece is if you're looking at more of a writing, So we'll use an example from this research process. So we'll look at a writing outline. So for this group, we actually broke down the persuasive, the argumentative writing piece, and we gave them a graphic organizer. Again, using Google. And what we said was, we're not asking you to rewrite yet. Because for our kids, it's really hard. That rewriting piece is really hard. So we said, take all of your information, everything that you've highlighted now, bring it over to this document. Now we're going to work on that writing process. We're not just going in free writing. We're going to work through this process. Again, looking at our kids and what's important to them, we try to design a tool that will help them be successful. It's not for everybody, but for our group, it was particularly helpful. And they just paste their information. So they write a topic sentence, and then evidence A. So what's the first thing that's in color, red? Go ahead and paste it over. Now once you've got that, now start rewriting. Now start rewriting it, or how you want to include it. You know, one thing we kind of noticed is maybe we should have included source on this. So next time we'll definitely go back and fix that. But this was a really helpful tool, and all it is a series of tables. The technology used in this process is not revolutionary, but combined with the design and the affordances of Google that it provides, that's where we really start getting that transformational piece. Because again, teachers have access to this. They can add comments at any point in time. So they're not waiting for the kid to do the outline, turn it in, and get feedback. It's real time. I could hop in right now. I could say, I don't necessarily like this, or I have a question about it. I can insert a comment. And the great thing about this is all of our comments are archived. So up in that comment tool, if I made a comment on this and asked the student to respond, they can resolve it, they can add another comment, but all of our comments are saved up top. I can even add notifications. So when student's responding back to me, I can get an email notification, or vice versa if they have email, so that they know when I responded. Again, it takes that kind of turn it in, wait for feedback piece, it takes it out. That's why we can do this in short research. It's not a 4-week-long research process. It can happen within a week depending on where your kids are at or how much time they have. And that's on the high end. So again, using these graphic organizers to help organize that piece is really helpful. What's also cool about this is on the bottom of the template is we can help them. So this group she wanted to focus on transition words in their sentence. We put the chart there. We don't care how well they spell them. That's not what we're assessing. We're looking at sentence structure. Put them on there. They need them, they can copy and paste them, or they have it right there on the sheet. Again, having the ability to add things on the fly, or if a particular student's struggling, you can put examples on there for them too. But again, this idea of copy-paste, you know, a lot of kids start by thinking it's cheating because they've been told don't copy. Copy, that's what it's there for. And then rewrite it later. And the great part about it is, because all of this is open, because you have access to all of it, you as a teacher can go back. Well, you can see where they copied from. You can see where it originated, and you definitely tell if there's plagiarism taking place. So we said, we'll know if it's copied, we'll know if it's plagiarized. But do what's best for you so that you could be successful. If you want to copy every piece up to that point, great. Okay? And that's that writing outline piece. Again, it could be anything. You know, somebody likes the hamburger diagram. Great. Okay, make it in boxes and put it on Google Docs. And then use that collaborative piece and use the feedback piece to do your assessment. It's a really cool tool. Moving on, I know I was sitting out by the pool and I heard people talking about Doctopus and kind of making fun of the word. It is kind of a crazy word and does throw people off. How many people are familiar with Doctopus? That's awesome. It is a fantastic tool. And when used in this process, can really help you organize. So I'm going to open up one of our Doctopus spreadsheets. So what Doctopus does, it is a Google script. It's a Google script, or it's a spreadsheet script that essentially automates all the things that you would do by hand or have your kids do. Copy and share, change permissions, all those rename, create from a template. So, you know, the old way you can copy something out to your whole class and tell them, okay, class, go ahead, file, make a copy, right? And then somebody would inevitably end up typing on it, and then everybody gets the copy with the typing, okay? Then they're done that. And so Doctopus basically takes that out of the equation. And you can send out a template to everybody. They all get the same or they get different, it's up to you. But there's no people copying on it, especially for younger kids. This was a huge challenge to do this process with second grade, because they couldn't go into the share. They weren't used to it. You know, they would send it to the wrong email address. They didn't know what an email address was, some of them. So this takes it out. It's totally automated so that when they sit down, all we tell the kids is, go to Shared with Me and open up this. It's got your name on it. And it's right there for them. So the way Doctopus works is if you go to in any spreadsheet, if you go to your script gallery under Tools, it'll actually install this Doctopus kind of extension or script. And so the first step of Doctopus, cross our fingers here, the first step of Doctopus is this. How do you share your document? What are you sharing and how do you share it? So right now, this is set for individual all the same. So I want to give one template to everybody. Same template. We can push it out with Doctopus. But it also gives you different options. It gives project groups, so you can group kids so that only the kids in group, one group get this doc, and then the kids in another group get another doc. Okay, so you can group the kids in your spreadsheet. Or you can do individual differentiated. Every one of you is going to get, a doc, but it's going to be at your own level. So when I talked about that multimodal glossary, what we did was we created 3 separate templates and grouped the kids based on ability. In the spreadsheet, we designate which kids are A, B, or C, and then we tie the doc to that. What's really neat about this, and then we did that in close reading too, what's really neat about this is kids don't know any different. Everybody's getting something to work on. You don't know that mine has more information. It's not completely obvious, like you're going to use the blue book today and you're going to use this. They all get the same thing. They're all doing the same task. They're doing it at their level. And it's as easy as just setting it up in Doctopus and pushing a button. So if we were doing that individual differentiated, we would set that here. And what it does is it looks at your sheet, email, first name, last name. That's it. That's what it's looking for. So to get started, you create a spreadsheet, name, email. You might add group. You might add group to it. Because when you do individual differentiated or project groups, the column using the differentiation level, we just switch to group. And then you said A gets this doc, B gets this doc, C gets this doc. It makes copies of your doc for you. It shares it with the right kids, and it gives you ownership, them editing privileges. Okay? It's a really, really neat tool to be able to manage it. So you can see here, this is our essay. First name, email. If we had a group, that's where it would be. But then what it does is it creates a file and puts a link in it for you. So it links you back to the file. You don't have to worry about folders. You don't have to worry about organization. It gives you a live link. If I want to see what this kid is doing right now, I click on it. You may actually be writing on it. But I click on it, it goes right to the doc. It also tells you when it was last edited, so when they made changes. And it gives you really unlimited options. So that's a little bit of Doctopus. I strongly recommend using it. It takes a little bit of time to learn. There's some great videos online. But once you use it, I kind of promise you're not really going to want to go back to having kids copy and share. The other thing that's nice about this is for this research project, we just created a template for each assignment. You can also write it, if you're doing any kind of grading, you can write it in here too. So all of the information is in one place. It's a really fantastic tool. Now here's where it gets crazy. There's another tool with it called Goobric. Goobric is a Google Chrome extension. And what Goobric does, which is close to its name, is it will associate rubrics with any assignment. It will associate a rubric with any assignment. So let's look at this writing piece. So this little I up here in the corner is our Goobric. So what we did was we took a Google spreadsheet, and basically you write your rubric. Put your scores in the top row, your categories here, and your descriptors here. And call it a rubric. In Doctopus, once you've done your sharing, just click Attach a Rubric. And what that's going to do is as you go to that assignment, actually pretty funny, one of the kids is on there right now, that's awesome. What will happen is when you click on that I and you cross your fingers, it works. It puts the rubric right on the screen for you. You can score it here in this column, and you can leave feedback on the bottom. You can email the score to the kid, but what it does is it'll take that entire table and insert it right into the doc. So once that kid is done writing their assignment, it'll insert the Goobric directly underneath that assignment and give them that feedback. So again, depending on where you're doing it, if you're doing it for a rough draft, you can copy that rubric in. If you wanted to rescore it, go ahead and rescore it. It will update the scores, or it will mention that you scored it twice. So in your Doctopus here, in your spreadsheet, it'll show what score each one got and how many times you graded it. Okay? So that's using Goobric. Really, really neat tool. The other thing that I'll just mention briefly, and there's a video on here that kind of walks through it. I love Explain Everything. I think it's one of the best apps. I think it's a must-have app on an iPad. It's called Explain Everything. But essentially what you could do is you can actually open up Google Docs on here, and if you wanted to write and record yourself, you can record a video of yourself annotating and giving feedback on a writing piece on a Google Doc. So if you're really, really creative or ambitious or just really like this app, you can use Explain Everything to actually write on the Google Doc, highlight, and you can record your voice while you're doing it and send that back to the kid as a video in their Google Drive folder. And there's a video on here that kind of explains how to do it. It's really awesome. You know, it's really awesome. So if you like that kind of feedback, or your kids really respond to that, or you maybe don't have time to conference with everybody all the time, it's a really, really great tool to be able to provide them that voice feedback. So again, it's using Explain Everything. You can click in your Google Drive on an iPad, open in. You can do it in other things too, but open in, Explain Everything. It'll open the doc. Really, really neat tool. So from this whole process, you know, what do we learn from it? We've been doing it for a couple years. And I think the first thing is, we talk about design being fluid. You know, if we look at it from a design thinking standpoint, we started with a problem. You know, we don't know where kids are getting their information. We don't know if they're right, wrong. We don't know if it's an issue of close reading, comprehension, or they just aren't doing it right. You know, we have no idea. So we want to design a tool that does that, but it's fluid. We make mistakes. We prototype things and we look back and say, did this really work? And some people would say, I had a principal friend last night said, well, that's just best practice. It's just good teaching. Yeah, it is. But I think, you know, looking at this process is important too. That it's okay to prototype things. It's okay to tell the kids it's a prototype. So for this high school writing assignment, we said, we're testing this out. See how it works. Give us feedback. We'll change it. You know, we didn't have the source thing in it. That was part of confusion for kids. We'll change it next time. I think it makes that process very powerful. It's not a worksheet. It's not a textbook. It's not, here you go. Good luck. We'll see you in a couple weeks. It's a fluid process, but it's one that works. Tables are good. Tables are great. Tables help kids organize information, especially when they're working collaboratively. You know, we have a rule. When a kid's in a cell, it lights up, it's like an outhouse. Somebody else is in there, don't go in there. Okay? The kindergartners really like that one. But tables are great. They help us organize information. You know, some people look so rigid, but it's a great way to keep organized. You know, it's an example of a KWL. They just write their information in there. It's a great graphic organizer. Templates are also good. We create templates for kids in our template galleries. We had last year, at the end of the year, we spent a year working with this 5th grade group on research and different tools that they could use to do the research. And the last project, we said, hey, listen, we're researching this. Use what you want. We don't care. Use what you want. Use what's going to make you successful. Here's some options. You want to use paper? Great. You want to use your own doc? Great. You have the templates here. You know where to find them. Half the class ended up going back to the template. And the feedback was that they really liked it. So the kids are independently going back and finding that information. They're using that tool on their own. Templates promote that independence. They're not waiting for me to give them a table. If they're doing research and they think it's helping them organize, they go get it themselves. So templates are really great. If you have any questions about this process, on my blog, newschooltechnology.org, there's a lengthy reflections on this type of process. Pretty much everything I've just said written down with pictures and some videos and some links. So if you want to go back, and again, this will be available after the session too on YouTube, and hopefully all my links are clickable. But if you have questions at any point in the process or just things you want to talk about, feel free to email me. My email is just mfur@gmail.com. My Twitter handle is @newschooltech. I really hope you guys have a wonderful conference. This is the first session, and hopefully you enjoy the next 2 days. Thank you guys very much.